Aria, congratulations. Is something good coming soon? My friend Lisa from college sent me a picture. My fiancé, Jackson, is sitting on a hospital stool with his arms around a woman in a white dress, her head resting feebly on his shoulder. Her long hair covered most of her face, and although her body shape was very similar to mine, I knew that this was not me. The words obstetrics and gynecology on the door frame almost dazzled my eyes. Still reeling from the shock, the phone rang again. Click on a look is a new home water bill notice payment reminder. I don't understand. This is the wedding house my father bought for us to get married. It was renovated 3 months ago, and now it's just the ventilation staged. How can I have a water bill when I've only moved a few things and never lived there? I immediately changed my clothes and went out, found the property description of the community, and asked them to adjust the stairwell surveillance to show me. Sure enough, I soon saw Jackson get into the elevator with the woman in his arms, and the two were very intimate, even hugging and kissing in the elevator several times, as if they were inseparable. Shock, disappointment, disgust, all kinds of emotions are coming in dot. I tried to resist the inner sour, took out the mobile phone to record all these surveillance clips. After leaving the property office, I bought a small camera and installed it in my new home. By the time everything was set up, it was dark. Jackson was already home when I opened the door. I heard him talking on the phone when I came in, but he hung up as soon as he heard me coming back. Seeing me come back, he immediately put on a concerned and anxious expression and came over and wrapped me in his arms with his hands. Baby, where have you been? He won't answer calls. I smelled a strange fragrance on his chest. Look up and ask him, did you change your perfume? Oh, my colleague bought a new perfume this afternoon. I tried it, thinking that if it smells good, I will buy it for you next time. He's a liar, and I want to give him a Best Actor award. I pushed him away without a trace and looked at the man again. We were college classmates, dating in the junior year, and then we took the postgraduate entrance exam together and went abroad together. Because of his family difficulties, my family bears all the tuition fees and daily expenses for both of us abroad. After returning to China after graduation, he joined a technology company. He stayed for 2 months and told me that he didn't like the current company atmosphere, so I begged my father again, and my father arranged him to join the current company as a department director through relations. This year, we were going to get married, and my family had already bought us a wedding house in the center of the city, and I thought everything was going to happen according to schedule, and he gave me such a fatal blow. He pulled me to the living room couch and sat down. Honey, I was just on the phone with my mom, and I wanted to talk to you about something. What is it? He paused for a few seconds before he said, I know this may not be the best time to say this, but we're going to be a real family soon, and there shouldn't be any separation. You know my brother? I am more than 30 years old, divorced once, worked outside for a few years, and finally fell in love this year. Now talking about marriage, the girl asked him to have a suite here. The size cannot be discussed, but must have. You know that with his own ability, it is impossible to afford a house now. I thought, your parents did not have a small house of 60 square meters before the empty? At this point, he rubbed his hands and looked at me expectantly. I got it right away. Is this another attempt to get the white wolf? You mean let my parents give him the house? I deliberately raised my voice and made a look of disbelief. No. He waved his hand in defense. Baby, don't misunderstand me. I just said that the first transfer to my brother's name, when they get married in your name, when the house is still ours. Then isn't it a lie? How can it be a fraud after a few years my brother is rich, and then buy a house is the same? We just helped him to advance the time a little. Arya, you don't want to do this? He became suddenly serious. I stared at him and said nothing. His face began to look ugly, and after a moment he stood up. I see. The company has some business. I have to go back to work overtime. Won't come back in the evening. Then, without looking at me, he took his coat and walked out the door. At 11 p.m., a push popped up on my phone, reminding me of a new monitor I had installed. I held my breath and opened it to see who else it could be. The third party who intruded on my marriage in the winter wore a pitiful dress pressed against him and shoved her mouth in his face. Jackson smiled, put his arms around her, touched her buttocks, and exclaimed, "That's a beautiful dress." The two immediately entwined together, and I watched this unsightly scene, feeling so ridiculous in this relationship for so many years. Fortunately, it wasn't too late. Jackson and I weren't married yet, and I didn't cause more damage. After tossing and turning all night, I finally fell asleep, only to be awakened at 7 o'clock by a rapid and loud knock on the door. Oh, this dog man is coming back. My heart made a cold hum, but in the moment of opening the door to meet a strong slap. Arya, how ungrateful you are. Jackson's mother, Sophia, was standing in the doorway with a plastic pocket, her waist crossed, looking at me through her nostrils. Being a little confused by this sudden one, I covered my face and said, "No, it should be me who should say this now. My son is so excellent. How can he see such a thing as you, selfish?" He gave me a sideways look, knocked me out, and walked straight through the door. "Get me a cup of hot water." She sat down on the sofa and shouted at me. I looked at her and didn't react. Deaf. Who are you showing that face to? You're not even in my house yet, and you're showing me your face. I don't think you have any tutor. She kicked off with her feet and threw her shoes aside. Yesterday, I asked Lulu to tell you to transfer your small house to his brother, but I heard you didn't want to. I realized at once why she was here today. No, I don't. Snap. A sound. She patted hard in front of the coffee table, face excited to stand up and point to me. Do you dare not? Do you know that after you get married, what is yours is ours, and to discuss with you now is to respect you. After marriage, that's not even discussed with you. Besides, my son can make so much money now. Which of those clothes and bags in your locker are not bought with his money? He didn't pay for your food? After all these years, this money is enough for a house. Now you are not married. You turned against me. I will teach you a lesson for your parents today. After saying that, he brandished his hand and hit me again, just because I didn't wake up and didn't react. Now I can understand very well. I immediately grabbed her arm and pushed her back onto the couch with an easy push. I stepped forward to suppress her. I respect you now as an elder, not with you, but I tell you clearly today, over the years, your baby's son really did not spend any money on me. I bought my clothes and bags with my own money, and you don't have to talk about them. If you insist today that I used his, I will settle the score with you first. He spent hundreds of thousands of dollars studying abroad a few years ago, and his living expenses were all provided by my parents. Going abroad, which international students with us are not rich or expensive, he does not blink when he sees others buying luxury goods. He also begged me to buy this and buy that for him. More than $2 or $3 million were spent on him in those 3 years. Before I could finish, she interrupted me, screaming, "Nonsense. There are not so many. Lulu went on a scholarship, and it was you who begged him to go with you. And who knows if those things are true. Lung, this is not consistent with the facts of the year. At the beginning of our just dating not long, I was ready to go abroad. He learned that open and hidden with me, said that I want to go out with me, common progress. That was the first time I fell in love. And soon he coaxed me around and I agreed. And he didn't have the money to pay tuition, and my parents gave it. And how in his mother's mouth it became me begging him to go with a scholarship. Aria, what are you doing? Jackson came back out of nowhere, saw me holding her mom down on the couch, and his veins were bursting with rage. A few steps came over and pushed me away. I lost my footing and was pushed to the ground by him, hitting my head on the coffee table, and a huge pain hit me instantly. I tried to stand up, but he grabbed me by the collar again. "What did you do to my mother?" he asked excitedly. I looked up at him. "Jackson, aren't you tired of playing both sides?" After saying that, I suddenly felt a red heat flow blocking my view, and I touched it with my hand. It was blood. He was obviously frightened by this scene and suddenly froze in place, and my blood flowed more and more, and my head began to become dizzy. He managed to get up by leaning on a chair behind him, walked to the door with their eyes on him, and then knocked on the door of the neighbor across the street. Soon, the girl on the other side opened the door, saw me look like this with wide eyes, and quickly supported me. "Please call the police for me." And with that, I passed out dead. When I woke up, I saw the two nervous and worried faces of my parents, accumulated grievances for a few days, and finally couldn't hide them, and cried out. My mother immediately hugged me and stroked my back. "Aria, don't be afraid, it's Mom. That bastard Jackson had the nerve to hit you, and I held my grown-up daughter on the palm of my hand to bully him like that. Aria, don't worry, Mom and Dad won't let him go so easily. My dad, with a livid face, told me as he stood by his hospital bed. After a while, I gradually calmed down. "Mom and Dad, I'm breaking up with Jackson." "That's great." My dad couldn't contain his surprise when I said that. "Your mother and I were worried that you would not want to, but you finally woke up. Jackson, that person, your mother and I did not like the beginning if you had not insisted on and him." He was talking when my mom slapped him on the arm and cut him off. His eyes signaled him to stop talking. My dad got the message and shut up. After a few days, see, my body is really no major obstacle. My mother to do me out of hospital. No sooner had she left than Jackson appeared at the door.
Thunk.
He knelt directly in front of me. "Aria, I was wrong. Please forgive me and don't break up with me." I took a step back, distancing myself from him. "Jackson, all these years you've seen me as nothing more than an easy cash machine to obey, right? How can you think so? That day I was watching my mother being pressed by you on the sofa for a moment of impatience. These days I have calmed down and feel that I am indeed impulsive. My mom feels sorry for you, too. So she asked me to pick you up from the hospital today. Aria, just give me one more chance, okay? My mother cooked at home today. All you like to eat. Will you come back with me?" His eyes begged, but my heart was already calm. There's no way Jackson is acting like this because he suddenly feels bad about me. I've been in hospital for several days, not to mention visit me, not even a phone call. I want to see what kind of medicine he is selling by making such a change of heart today. I sneered. "Well, I'll go back with you today." Hearing my answer, he brightened up, grabbed my hand, and assured me, "Don't worry, I will never do that again." Followed him back to our old place, and his mother greeted us as soon as we walked in, with a fake smile on her face. "Aria is back. Did it hurt anything?" She pretended to touch me. I instinctively avoid. Looking at Sophia, who was completely different from that day, I really felt separated. I didn't speak and went directly into the room. Then a familiar-looking woman came out of the kitchen carrying soup. She was wearing a new H dress from the season, which, if I remember correctly, seemed to be mine. I felt a chill in my heart that these mother and son had brought their mistresses to me, and wearing my clothes. Sophia broke her silence as I stared at her for a moment. "This is my niece, Riley. She got her dress dirty while cooking. I thought you two were about the same size, so I asked her to change it." I opened my eyes wide in surprise, pointed at her, and asked, "Is it his cousin?" Sophia nodded. My stomach turned upside down. This family is disgusting. I can't believe Jackson hooked up with his cousin. "Sister, I just saw a lot of beautiful dresses in your closet. Do you mind if I wear this?" Before I could say anything, Jackson beat me to the punch. Ari is not the kind of person with a small belly. Then he pulled me to the table and sat me down. I tried to compose myself. It would be too easy for me to fight him now. I couldn't let this man cheat and womanize so easily. After sitting down, Sophia helpfully put food in my bowl. "Aria, You and Lulu have been talking for so long. You're almost old. I looked at the days the other day and found that next Saturday is a good day. Why don't you two go to get the certificate next week? I put down my chopsticks and slowly said, I'll have to go back and talk to my parents about this. Oh, what are we talking about here? You have to control your own happiness. If your parents don't agree with you, won't you get over it? Sophia looked worried. Aria, we've been together for so long. Don't you know who I am? Jackson gave me a serious look. I looked at them, simply decided to accompany them to play on. Now it is not impossible to get married, but after all, this is still a very big thing. If you really want to marry me, at least have to come up with a little practical action to prove it. What do you want me to do? This week we get engaged first. You take me to buy the ring and everything else, and then invite our 2 close relatives to have dinner together in a restaurant. What do you think? Jackson and Sophia looked at each other, and Jackson nodded in agreement, as if he had made up his mind. Well, I'll do as you say. I glanced at Riley out of the corner of my eye, and sure enough, her expression was extremely ugly. When I finally said yes, Jackson was relieved, then looked at me cautiously and said, Aria, last week I got a subpoena from the court for your father. He wants me to return the cost of going abroad for a few years, a total of $1.2 million, you see. The misunderstanding has been solved. You want to help me talk to your father? Let him withdraw the lawsuit? Yes, Aria, we are a family. Always talking about money is very hurt feelings, and your father suddenly stopped working on the road. You say why he did such a drastic thing. You go back and tell him. I got it right away. I mean, these 2 guys are waiting for me, all of a sudden like a 180-degree change in attitude. I pretended to agree and nodded. I'll talk to him. Seeing how quickly I was convinced, Jackson smiled with satisfaction and offered me a piece of meat from his bowl. I do not want to eat. Reach out to stop. The result of chopsticks did not hold steady, fell on the ground. The reflex was to bend down to pick it up, but at that moment I looked down and saw Riley, who was sitting across from me, put his leg on Jackson's thigh in front of me, with an ambiguous face. My face turned sour, and I stood up to Riley and asked, Where are your legs? Jackson quickly takes her leg off and looks at me awkwardly. My sister's been like this since she was a little girl, Aria. Yes, sister. We are brother and sister. Don't get me wrong. Riley says, I'm really gonna throw up. I'm afraid I can't stay any longer without exposing the disgusting faces of this family, so I just turned on it. I'm going back to my parents' house today. With a black face, he turned and walked out the door. When I got home, I told my parents the whole story about Jackson's cheating cousin and what the family was planning, and let them play with me first. Doesn't that family love money? Then I'll give him a good whack. The next day, Jackson arrived at my parents' house early, and as soon as he walked in, he began to feel guilty and ask me questions. Aria, take you rings shopping today? I cold a face. Yesterday your cousin in front of me with the leg hook you that I did not forget. Oh, why do you eat all kinds of vinegar? She is my cousin. What can I have with her? And then he came and grabbed me and tried to take me out. Jackson was a jerk, and I was afraid that doing more would backfire, so I followed him out the door with a pretense of reluctance. Probably scared by my dad's manipulation, he took me straight to the jewelry store. As soon as I entered, I was surrounded by enthusiastic sales. "That's nice," I said, pointing to a glittering ring from a distance. "Miss Shin has a good eye. It's the only one that just arrived." Hearing that, I got even more excited. "Is it? Will you let me try?" "Of course you can." With that, the salesman went to take out the diamond ring and gave it to me. I took it and put it on my hand. In a moment of joy, I deliberately raised my hand and waved it in Jackson's face. "Is it nice?" Miss Shun is really good at choosing. Our store is celebrating its anniversary now, and it's only $30,000, which is still a good deal. Jackson's face stiffened, but he managed to squeeze out a smile. "Aria, isn't this ring too loud? It doesn't match your temperament. Should we look at other rings?" He looked at me tentatively. "But this is what I like." I'm absolutely certain. But what else was he trying to say? I quickly interrupted. "Jackson, you won't even buy me this?" In the end, under multiple pressures, Jackson bought the order with a livid face. When I got home, I threw the ring away and Jackson came up. "The ring is also bought. Should we go and get the certificate tomorrow?" I looked at him and said earnestly, "I think holding the wedding before obtaining the license is also a kind of performance that you are responsible for me." "See my resolute attitude," he smiled. "I know this is not a smooth mention of it." In the evening, he found an excuse to go out, and soon the surveillance pushed a new message to come. I opened it, and sure enough, it was the dog and the girl again. Riley sat on Jackson's lap in a short skirt. "You bought it for her today?"
Yes.
30,000. This is money I've been saving for years. And that woman got him into it. Damn it. He threw away his cigarette angrily. Then he changed his voice. "But you can rest assured, as long as you cheat her into marriage first, everything will be ours. That woman is very easy to cheat." After she said that, Riley sweetly leaned forward and hugged him around the neck and comforted him. "It's okay. I understand. I don't want children to trap wolves. By the way, your brother called me this afternoon and said that he would come back next month, so we should be careful not to be found out by him."
What?
"Why would he come back all of a sudden? I don't want Aria to meet him. I told her he was divorced, and now he has a new girlfriend who wants a room. If he tells Aria about your relationship, it's all over. Don't worry, I'll play it by ear and keep them out of it." Hearing these words, I was instantly stunned. What is the relationship between them? Riley is his cousin, and by that logic, his brother's cousin. Why this relationship is afraid, I know. I quickly opened the address book and found the WeChat of the private investigator added before. "Kim, please look into this man for me." I sent Riley's name and photo. Half an hour later, I received a PDF file. Name: Riley, 28 years old, married Lucas at 23 years old. I was stunned when I saw the first line, Lucas, which is Jackson's brother's name if I remember correctly. So, Riley isn't his cousin at all. She's his sister-in-law. At the beginning, it was Sophia who introduced Riley to me as his cousin. Does it mean that Sophia knew the situation of these two people, or even agreed to it, or assisted them? This is a disgusting family. I resisted the urge to curse and looked on. Lucas works outside all the year round, only to return home once or twice a year. Violent personality, has a record of domestic violence against Riley. The couple divorced 3 years ago, but remarried a month later when Riley found out she was pregnant. They have a daughter, now 2 years old, who lives in their hometown and is usually taken care of by Jackson's mother. Can we find out when she hooked up with Jackson? I asked. It's been at least 3 years, and the earliest records we can find of their rooms back then. 3 years ago, Jackson was with me abroad, and he made excuses to come back every now and then, only to come back to do this. Is it possible Riley's baby is Jackson's? It cannot be ruled out. They got back to me soon. Please try to confirm it for me. The news was so explosive that I could not recover for a while and leaned on the sofa for a long time. I looked at the eye monitoring. 2 people also cuddled together, suddenly angered. Did she just say Lucas will be back next month? Well, then I'm gonna give him a big welcome present. I picked up my cell phone and called Jackson. They were interrupted by me, and their faces were not very good, but they immediately changed their faces when they were connected. Aria, what's wrong? I'm out in the middle of a meeting. Let's have the wedding next month. Jackson didn't expect my sudden change of heart and was delighted to hear that. Okay, I'll start preparing. After hanging up the phone, he happily hugged Riley for a spin. She said the wedding is next month. Don't worry, Riley. In a year at most, I'll transfer all her assets to me, and then we can do whatever we want. When I heard that, I really wanted to go across and slap this man who cheated and played with women's feelings. Jackson didn't want me to back out, so he immediately started planning the wedding and asked me about my dowry. I can't let him down with his expectations. My father said that in addition to the wedding house prepared now, the villa in the south of the city will also give us the other. My parents love me so much. Money and car will not be less. Hearing this, his eyes lit up and he laughed so hard that he could hardly close his mouth. So get ready for your wedding. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event. He nodded like a jerk. Of course, as long as you're happy, everything I do is worth it. I turned my head and rolled my eyes. You'll say anything for the money. Then your relative's brother or something should come. When I mentioned his brother, he was obviously shocked. I wonder if he'll have time then. We have been together for so long, and the only people I have seen in your family are your mother and your cousin. You are not hiding anything from me, are you? I asked deliberately. Why, don't think about it all the time. Then call him right now in front of me and ask him if he's coming. This. Finally, at my insistence, Jackson reluctantly made the call right in front of me. The phone connected and a cold male voice rang. I grabbed the phone and said, "Hello, brother. I am Jackson's fiancé. We are getting married on the 5th of next month. I wonder if you have time to come back to attend?" The head paused and said, "Jackson's getting married. I'll come." Taking a break, I glanced up at Jackson's expression, and it was funny how his facial features were pulled together. I handed him the phone with great satisfaction. "Your brother said he would come and bring your little niece with him." Sometimes I wish I could persuade Jackson to learn expression management, to write his emotions all over his face in case I didn't know what he was really thinking. Back at work, just parked my car, the detective sent me a message about Riley's daughter. Her daughter luck is Jackson's. I stood in the parking lot and took a deep breath to numb myself, which is okay, because this family knows no bounds and anything is possible. The wedding happened as planned, but Sophia hasn't been nice to me since she met me this morning. I don't understand. Where the wedding is not held, you have to choose such an expensive hotel. Do you have any idea how much money our family has paid for this marriage? You are going to empty Lulu." I stared at her without emotion. "Oh, but you wanted me to get married, and Jackson agreed to choose this hotel." Without looking at her again, he went straight to the dressing room. But I still heard her call me a loser behind my back. On the way there, I passed a closed door. Women's sixth sense is really strange. I am not controlled by the door. Soon there was a sound from inside. "I am afraid that your brother will come later, and I will be exposed easily if I am also here. I will come to see you first and leave after a while." "Honey, you're so sweet. How did you know I wanted to see you so badly today? Let me touch you. You look hot today." Jackson's voice rang out. Then there were groans in the room and a sick feeling in my stomach. It has not been a day or two since these two men were in collusion with each other, and when people like this come and go today, they are still so bold that they really do not pay attention to me. I left quickly, found the MC, and gave him a used shield. "This is my surprise for the groom. Please ask the staff to connect it to the big screen when the vows are taken." The master of ceremonies is familiar with this kind of hand-you disc. You can rest assured that our professionals will help you make it perfect. I nodded with satisfaction and went out the door. Just as I walked to the door, I was confronted by a man wearing a vest with tattoos all over his arms and a little girl in a skirt. "Are you Aria?" His tone is not good. I nodded despite my doubts. "I'm Jackson's brother, Lucas. This is my daughter." It dawned on me that I immediately saw something similar to Jackson in both men's faces. I just called him and didn't pick up, so I came straight in. I thought to myself, he's screwing your wife, so he can't take your call. But the face-saving work still had to be done. I took him to the lobby and found a seat. As soon as he sat down, Jackson arrived late, his neatly pressed suit visibly creased. Seeing that I had talked to Lucas, He ran over nervously to hold me, and then looked at Lucas guiltily. "Brother, you didn't call me when you came, so I could pick you up?" Did not expect Lucas' oblique glance at him, only slowly opened. "I thought you think I give you shame, don't want to recognize me, this brother. How dare I let you answer it? Brother, don't talk nonsense. How can I deny you? Boy, looks like those two aren't getting along after all." The ceremony was about to begin, and the staff came to hurry us up. I walked away with my dress, and Jackson quickly followed me. "My brother, didn't say anything to you, did I?" I turned to look at him. I said it. He got nervous. "What did you say?" "My brother is a very unreliable man. Don't listen to him. He just said he has to leave tomorrow. What are you nervous about?" Jackson was visibly relieved to hear this. No. My brother has not read any books. I am afraid he will say something to you. It will not affect our relationship." Seeing his nonsense, I tried not to laugh. Soon the ceremony began. Almost all the guests had arrived, and I looked over at Lucas, who was leaning on his seat in the stands with a cigarette dangling from his mouth. I looked back and motioned for the MC to play the video I had prepared, and he gave me an okay sign. In an instant, the lights turned off, most of the video began to play. The first is the two of us in the past few years of photos and videos, just about half of the broadcast. Suddenly on the screen, a man and a woman are naked in a room holding each other doing immoral things. Before everyone had time to react, a child's voice suddenly sounded under the stage. It's Mom and Uncle. All eyes were gathered at once. Jackson panicked and shouted behind him, "Turn it off! Turn it off!" The video continued, and the two men said shameless words, and those who calculated my words were all played out for everyone to hear. The dinner was suddenly noisied.
Bang.
With a bang, Lucas flipped the table, and Luck was startled to the side, crying. Lucas stormed up with a bottle in his hand, hate in his eyes, and Jackson collapsed in shock. Sophia sees this and tries to stop her, but Lucas simply waves her away. He hit Jackson on the head, and the blood started pouring down his head. With Lucas, no one's gonna stop him. Jackson held his head and apologized. "I'm sorry, brother. I can't do it again."
Bitch.
"That's my wife." "How dare you two?" Then he picked up the stool next to him and threw it down on Jackson. He hit him several times, and he finally got tired, but Jackson had already been knocked unconscious. Sophia ran up to the scene and fainted. I don't know who called the police, but soon the police arrived and took Lucas away. I went back to the dressing room to change my wedding dress and walked out of the hotel without looking back. Back home, I turned off the mobile phone. This time I was really tired. Things temporarily ended. I should have a good rest for a while. 2 months later, my grandmother had high blood pressure, and my mother asked me to stop by the hospital on the way home from work to pick up some medicine for her. The car was just about to enter the basement, and a woman walking in front accidentally hit the opposite battery car. The lunchbox in her hand was scattered on the ground, and the body was also made everywhere. I look like a mess. This figure is too familiar. This is not 2 months ago. She was still beautiful, Riley. This period of time has passed a lot of Haggard. Unable to resist curiosity, I parked my car and followed her to the hospital. As soon as she followed her to the door of the ward, Sophia saw the empty lunchbox and slapped her hard. He said, "Useless thing. Nothing can be done right," said as if still feel not to solve the gas, and heavy push her aid, crying, "What evil has happened to our family? How did you meet such a broom star? I have a son in prison and a half paralyzed in a hospital bed, and it's all your fault. How do you expect an old man like me to live?" The more she said, the more excited she became, grabbing Riley's hair. "This is all because of you. My son clearly has a great future. All because of you, Fox." She tore Riley's hair and threw it on the floor. A lot of people gathered around and started pointing at them. This woman, she slept with her brother-in-law and gave birth to a child, and her husband beat him into a vegetable.
Bah.
Shame on you. Riley, who had just been silent, didn't know if she was finally stimulated and stood up and kicked Sophia, who kept hitting her. After all, she is an old man. Naturally, Sophia could not bear the shock. She was confused and sat down on the ground. "I'm not serving. Who are you to hit me? I was with Jackson. Didn't you know that? What kind of good man are you now? Lucas wasn't home, and you deliberately created opportunities for me to spend time alone with Jackson. You're afraid I'll run away. Afraid no one will babysit you in the future. I'll tell you today, I'm really done serving in your house. I'm going to divorce Lucas tomorrow, and Jackson is out of my hands, so do what you want." Hearing this, Sophia exploded and jumped at her and wrestled with her. Because the noise was too loud, it eventually alerted the hospital security. After pulling them apart, I could see that Riley had 2 big scratches on his face. "I told you to run. Still want to run? After I see this face of yours, who will dare to want you?" Sophia had a knife in her hand at some point. The blood was slowly oozing out, and she gradually realized that something was wrong. She rubbed her left hand on her face, and suddenly there was a pool of blood on her hand. Panicked, she ran to the door and saw her face reflected in the glass. It was a shock. Suddenly, she burst into tears and collapsed to the ground. Sophia laughed and shouted, "This bitch wants to run." She was born a member of my Chin family and died a ghost of my Chin family. You want to run?
Bah.
When Riley saw the police coming, he looked at me in surprise. "Did you call the police for me?" My face was blank. "Riley, I'm sorry." I smiled and said, "Don't say sorry. An apology is on your conscience, but I will not accept it. I will not forgive it. I called the police. I did what a citizen should do. It's just an obligation. I hope you and Jackson are reunited in prison soon." Riley opened his mouth to say something, but tears fell first, and he was taken away by the police. A few months later, my career was booming, Jackson and Sophia were still in jail, and Riley was disfigured and crying. I have come out of the original haze, is living a happy life.